Hi, and welcome back to the Peak Endurance Podcast. Episode 176 is an interview with Karin Traeger. Karin, I think I pronounced it right, is the Chief Executive of the non-profit Yarra Riverkeeper Association. And she set out to be the first known person to run the whole length of the Yarra River, from its source to the sea. Karin believes water is life, and the Birrarung Yarra River is Melbourne's living entity connecting us to country. Ron and I chat with her to find out how her run went and what she discovered along the way. It's a really fun and interesting chat, so I hope you enjoy it. Now, I really love working on this podcast and interviewing so many interesting people like Karin. I hope you enjoy listening. If you do, could you do me a huge favour and subscribe, rate and review? It makes a huge difference to me, not only personally, because who doesn't like, some positive feedback, but also helps the podcast audience grow and thus ensure I can keep getting amazing people to interview. Thank you. The link will be in the show notes so that you can do that, so it's nice and easy. Now, I have my next pole skills clinic on Sunday, the 6th of November, 2 till 3:30 p.m. up in the Dandenongs again. This course is invaluable for learning how to use your poles effectively when you are running and racing in the mountains. And to be honest, they're great for the flats. Don't forget to also go to peakchocolate.com.au to get 15% off some yummy chocolate that is actually good for you. You may have seen me posting in my stories about me indulging, but it's not really an indulgence. It's good for you. Enjoy our chat with Karin. Hi, Karin, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
Hi, Isabel. Hi, Ross. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So, I thought we would get you on the podcast and, Ron and I could ask you some questions about, you've recently had a bit of an adventure. We were talking before we started recording about adventures. But before we get into that, can you maybe give the listeners who may not know you a little bit of background on how you got into running and how you got interested in the environment and those sorts of things?
So I've been doing running, particularly ultra running for like the last 5. In terms of running, I've been running for the last 10 years. I was not a runner in school. I actually, in fact, hated running. I used to be a smoker, a very heavy smoker. Yes. And I stopped smoking before coming into Australia because I thought, well, it's going to be super expensive. I don't want to, spend too much money as a backpacker. But then also I was training for my first marathon and I thought, it's not really sustainable. Yeah. So, basically I didn't know anything about running. And one day I decided, I wanted to add something into my life in terms of, doing something different after a breakup. And a couple of friends were training for a 10K, and that's how everything started. Then when I started doing the ultra running stuff, I kind of decided, well, I just don't want to use it as a way of like feeding my own kind of ego or PVs or PRs and stuff like that. Because let's face it, I'm not fast and that's not my purpose. But I thought, I'm already kind of really conscious on the environmental issues, happening in the world. Is there any way I can sort of put my running with purpose for something different? So I was training for UTA back in 2018, I think it was. So yeah, 2018. And as I was using a lot of, the Yarra trails as a training ground, I was finding a lot of litter. And one day I just got really fed up, after like filling up all my pockets, with rubbish. It's like, well, how come like this is happening? Like, I'm from a developing country in South America, and that's normal. But I was like surprised to see a similar issue happening here. And I thought, well, if this is happening here, like I don't want to even think what's happening home. So I thought, well, is there any way I can sort of join these two things together? So passion for running and sports and being outdoors and active with, that environmental action they want to bring to a table. Because I thought, well, they don't have to be kind of limiting each other, like they can actually be combined, because people spending time outside are really kind of looking after nature anyway, or they want to be engaged with that type of concept. So that's how I started with the plastic runner. So we started running blogging events with the community for just once a month. And blogging is the action between, running and picking up litter. And like it's just always born out of me being a bit angry and having a bit of time on the weekends. And I thought, well, I'm using this park for my own purpose, of training. Maybe this is a simple action of giving back to it, so I can keep running on it and it looks cleaner, and hopefully less people's going to, dump rubbish, or they're going to pick it up if they see me doing the same. 5 years later, here we are now, that I'm pretty lucky to work for an organization that aligns with my values. So I'm the CEO for the Yarra Riverkeeper Association, which is a non-profit, that advocates. Yeah, so we advocate for the Yarra River, and we do a lot of work, in on the ground, part of all the campaignings and public policy kind of influence. But one of the things that we do is around plastics and pollution, and that's how I got involved as a volunteer just from the beginning, and eventually got a job with them, and that was awesome because it was like, well, that's great. That's what I'm really passionate about. And when I got the job, I started thinking, well, is there any way I can combine both? And that's how everything started, basically.
So can you tell us a little bit about the run, how it formed in your mind? What...
So basically, let's just quickly go over what you did. You did run the length of the Yarra River, didn't you?
Yeah, so technically...
Yes.
Yeah, the length is 242 k's.
Yeah.
But because it's located within close catchment, I did ask Melbourne Water, is there any way we can go in? But a part of that, I didn't want to sound like I have an entitlement to access something that's protected.
Yeah.
It was more like, well, is there any way we can go in and show people, but not fast, if we can't do it. And yeah, with all the detours and diversions, like it came out as 280.
Yeah, we were wondering about that. So then what was your...
Yeah, so what made you decide to run the whole thing? Were you looking at, where you thought the rubbish might be coming in, or was it just, it was there, so you did it? What was your motivation for actually running the whole thing?
I think it just came back from when I first came to Melbourne, that I realized a lot of my Melbourneian friends were not aware of the amazing waterway that we have crossing through the city. Like, like I was going to the Yarra Park and it was like, oh, where are you? It's like, I'm basically 10 minutes away from your house. Like, like that lack of recognition that we have amazing places within the corridor. And I thought, well, it's such a shame, that the average Melbourneian doesn't really know that 70% of drinking water comes from the Yarra River. So there's no kind of sense of respect or pride associated with the river. And I thought, well, is there any way that we can show people, that the same river up in Wolverton and Rifton is the very same river like down in the city? Because even creating that kind of connection between those really simple things, that there's nothing. Even I have a very close friend, I'm not going to name, she came for a run with me to Wolverton, and I was like, oh, that's the Yarra River. So it's like, what? Is that the Yarra? I was like, yes, that's the Yarra. Like, what do you mean? And well, I was like, well, if you got people like that there's no, it's not her fault, it's like how we have been maybe not being exposed to that educational component. But yeah, like a lot of people don't really like see that. So if they can't see that, they're not going to see the value. And if you don't see the value, they're not going to care for it and protect it and look forward to keep it clean or make it cleaner.
Yep. Now, Isabel and I have had this discussion many times. We've spent a lot of time around the Reefton, Warburton area, exploring when we were preparing for one of Isabel's longer runs. And we can't really decide where it actually starts, like where the Yarra River actually starts.
So come on, enlighten us. Where does it, if we wanted to go right to the start, the Yarra River, where would we go?
Well, you can actually Google it.
Oh God, we should have thought of that.
I mean, like there is like a little Google point, on Google Maps. It's called the Start of the Yarra. I was very lucky that my previous coach was Mike Cardiff, so you might know of him.
Yeah. Told us about the trails up to through Reefton.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the little goat Cardiff. So he was like telling me and like sharing me all this like information, you know, that he's been kind of researching maps and kind of really like dark underground, like underworld information, you know, on this stuff, because he really likes it, you know, like explore trails and stuff. And like just that's his thing. So eventually he sort of shared with me that the start is actually, you know, the how a lot of different creeks join into one single kind of waterway. So it's not like you're going to see like a massive river coming in like all together. It's just like
There's
literally
no
like
sign
a
there
little.
or anything.
No, there's no sign or anything, and because it's within the closed catchment, you can't really see it. So we had a bit of an estimation of whereabouts was this place, and yeah, you can literally Google it. So if you got to that little Google location, there's actually Melbourne Watergate, and well, that was our start. This is where it starts, you know, which makes sense because you got a lot of the creeks that feeds from the Thompson and all like the Latrobe and all that stuff that goes in there. So it's just having that idea that, well, this is roughly what we think it's going to start, and yeah, that's how we kind of claim it.
Right.
And so, I mean, you say you ran the length of the Yarra River, but I mean, like Ron said, we've done a bit of running in that area. How would you be able to run next? I know through the catchment areas you couldn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But even in the non-catchment areas, like it's very overgrown. And how did you negotiate that challenge?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And like, look, you got Maya Ward that a couple of years ago, she did the whole walk from sea to source. I think from her end was a bit different because they have access to private property and they were like, you know, following the river.
Yeah.
But it took them 21 days. So I thought to myself, I don't want to be disturbing, you know, bush or trampling on plants or anything like that that's going to create environmental impact. I wanted to keep it simple and easy enough that it was more like following the catchment and following the river using public trails and roads. So if someone else is going to do it again, you know, they're not causing any harm. And that was the main concept. So for example, like the day one is basically going around like to Mount Horseful, which is all accessible there. And then coming down to Reefton. And day two was pretty much, you know, public trail and road all the way up to the upper Yarra Reservoir to the dam.
Yeah.
And then jumping to O'Shaughnessy Aqueduct Trail, Redwood Forest, and then Wolverton. So kind of that. And in some areas, I'm at the decision, that was day three. I didn't want to go through like Yarra Junction and Millgrove towards Hillsville because, you know, there's no shoulder. It's pretty much on the road. It's pretty ugly. And I thought like, you know what? Why not just Buang? We like it. We love that place, you know, so special. It's basically like you got the whole view of the catchment and like the river itself, you know, down there. And I thought like that's way better value, you know, in terms of showing people like what amazing place we have than just stick to the road for another day and just have a bit of a sucky moment.
And okay, so that kind of explains that one, because I was going to say it would be really extremely difficult and treacherous underfoot, and like you said, causing damage to the little plants and so on. So that was your basic course. Now, obviously, it's not 280 kilometres from where it starts, so it must really wind its way a lot.
Pretty much, yeah. So, well, there's a lot of, you know, diversions going on day one, which that added into, you know, the tally, but also day four, which is Hillsville to Warrandyte, that was the hardest one, because then you have to like there's no accessible trail, which is a pity, because this really old rail trail, you know, that they're now building it hopefully for like bike access, you know, and walkers. But there's a lot of, you know, diversions between the public road and then getting to Yarra Glen and then going to Melbourne Highway, which is madness, you know, like on the side, towards like the Yarra Valley Trail. And then once we got there, it's like, okay, we're back in like, you know, safe place. But then jumping again into the road to head towards Mount Lofty. Once you get to Mount Lofty, you're basically following the river all the time because you're on the Mount Yarra Trail, and that's great. But before that, it was just a whole bunch of, diversions and trying to find a better way. Yeah.
So that's how all those kilometres added up. What was your total elevation gain and loss on the run?
I think it was about 5,000.
So that was gain?
Yeah.
Because theoretically then you should have lost more. Would that be right?
I think that was like accumulated. I think it was like around 5,000. I will have to just double check.
Let me know later and I'll put it in the show notes in case people are interested in the stats.
So how long did you take to do it? Like, you're talking about day 1, day 2. How many days did it take you to complete the whole thing?
6 days. I mean, like, look, you can do it quicker, 100%, but it was not the purpose of that. We thought we really want to take the time to enjoy it, connect with it, take some really good photos, make some footage, and break it down in a way that's more like digestible as well.
And how many kilometers did you do a day?
Day 1 was like 72.5. Day 2 about 50. Day 3 was 37. Day 4 was 55. Day 5 was 39, I think, and then the last one was like around 29.
Oh, that's nice to finish with a shorter day.
Yeah.
So that's still, a solid week of running.
Yeah. And did you do it with other people? Did you have people joining you at different times, or how did that work?
Yes, so we had a few people in rotation, and I have mainly a couple of friends that they join, and someone very random that ended up being amazing. So that's big shout out to Scott Beams.
Of course, isn't he awesome? He's the best. He ran with me on both my long runs too.
Yeah, he told me that. So no, he was such a legend. Like literally,
he is a character of the trail running scene.
Yeah.
The only crazy person that would just show up at Hillspill in the bakery at 3 a.m.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Oh no, he was awesome. But the thing is, like, because I had a bit of a thought, like, do I really want to do this on my own? Do I want to do a solo thing, or is it going to be with friends, or am I going to be the Forrest Gump of the trail? I don't really know. But I ended up just making the decision. You know what? This is a run for the community, to share with them, to share with my friends, to share, with other people. This is to have fun. I don't need to have like solitude time enough. I mean, I did have some solitude time, but in a way that I was like, no, you know what? Let's just have friends joining. Let's make this like a really big kind of girls retreat for like a weekend and do this crazy stuff. And then eventually, if I have friends that want to join, everyone's sort of welcome to share it. Because that was the thing, like how we can connect community to the river and the trail, and just have fun, have a really nice day out there. And then Scott showed up, and it was like a bonus. He came for like two full days, which is like amazing.
Yeah, not surprised.
Yeah, and he was like such a legend. So I had the best time with people, and also like the best time on my own as well.
Yeah. And so where did you sleep at night?
Airbnbs. Like, look, like some people ask me, like, are you going to camp? And it's like, you know what? I don't really need to.
No,
I'm going to have a really long day.
It's nice.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I was like, well, I really want to have a shower at the end, and having a bit of a luxury as well in terms of cozy bed, a nice sleep, so I can just recover properly.
So did you plan out where you were going to stop each night ahead of time?
Yeah, so I thought, well, the 3 first nights we stay in Warburton, because that was the easiest place to, head back to after each day. And day 3, I mean, like, this 3rd or 4th night, I think, we stay one night in Hillspill, then another night in Warrandyte, and then the last night I stay at my place because I'm in South Yarra.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Oh, that was well planned then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I have never done something like this before, so the whole planning aspect was pretty much new. I didn't want to overthink it, and I just tried to keep it super simple, in a way that, well, what makes more sense, Warburton, it's like more like centralized, that we don't have to drive 4 hours from home to get to a start of the Yarra at 1 a.m. So that made it easier. But also, just understanding access to just basic stuff, like supermarket and
Yes.
So
how long ago did you start planning this?
It's been 2 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
I know, thanks COVID.
Of course. Yeah.
But like, look, I had like,
can I ask, did you see many masks?
Sorry, what?
When you're talking about the rubbish that you saw, were there lots of masks?
No, there was well, no, not masks, but what I found a bit disappointing is that like a lot of broken glass and like cans and stuff from people on four-wheel drive properly. Probably, but I don't want to point fingers at four-wheel drivers though. Some people out there are doing amazing stuff and they usually go and clean it up. But it's just a bit disappointing, especially there was really like nice kind of pristine forest that you get kind of hard access. Finding like a little bonfire with all the crap around and just
So how are you hoping to use this run to further your cause?
So we are looking to creating more footage in the next couple of weeks, so we can join all that together and use that to basically like do storytelling, in terms of, well, not sharing my story with the run, but hopefully get some other people to share their own stories of the river, and that we can share that with people and say like, look, this is like an amazing waterway that you got just literally there. You can just go out of home and go for a walk in the river's there. Well, eventually you're going to connect to a creek that's going to feed into the river anyway. And the whole idea, and this is more like a personal course for me, I would like to just have it more like into sort of film festivals that they go around, because like usually you don't see a lot of films led by women.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was my feeling with the last couple of like Run Nation or the other like film festivals. Like 80% is just blokes filming themselves going into like, I don't know, like, I'm going to run up a mountain 100 times. And it's like, well, that's great, but what about women? So just having more representation so all the women can actually think about it and say like, you know what, I want to do that too, or I want to do something similar, and just think that there's someone else doing it as well, so it's not that crazy.
And so where did you find the rubbish kind of started from?
Well, good question. And sadly we found some stuff even like going up Mount Horsefall. So pretty much from the start, then going into like the Upper Yarra Reservoir, we were like in one of those like pipeline tracks, and we found like someone basically illegally dumped a whole bunch of stuff, and it was massive. Like there were like batteries and like car batteries and stuff like that. And it's like, well, this is rubbish, literally rubbish. And it's a tricky one because you're not going to be able to pick it up. So we left it, but there's an app that you can use called Snap Send Solve, and that usually like geotags your location and the photo that you take, and that will target the relevant like authority that it's kind of has the jurisdiction of the area. So either it's Parks, Melbourne Water, or the council, and they usually get the notification then, and they'll organise a pick up.
Oh, good.
And so were you picking up the rubbish as you went?
We did pick up a couple of things.
Hard rubbish.
Yeah. Like we did pick up a couple of things. I think in total with the whole 6 days, we had 3 bags of rubbish.
Yeah.
And it was like, look, the purpose of the run is not to become
I just
like
wasn't sure if that was something you were doing as well.
Yeah, we were just doing sporadically, if we found a couple of things here and there, we picked up a couple of bits here and there. But it's a bit harder, especially if you go for like a long day and there's no access to the crew. It's like, hi, I'm coming with a mattress.
You could just have a nap on it, maybe.
Yeah.
And so you did have a crew, so they would meet you at different points, did they?
Yeah. So I had Hilary McAllister from For Wild Places.
Yeah.
She was just such a legend, like literally volunteered to be there the whole week driving around. And that was like amazing because like I don't know how I could have done it without her.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been, you know, way harder in terms of accessing to things and like maybe me organizing drop off and driving around like crazy. But yeah, so she was meeting me in a couple of points that the same thing when I mapped the whole thing out. Because I went to those places for like the last 2 years, I knew where it was the best place to park or best place to meet in between and kind of break it down into some sections there that was more like, you know, easy.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. So, what has this kind of whet your appetite for other sorts of point-to-point runs, like, you know, maybe other rivers, other, you know, some other environmental areas that you'd like to focus on?
Well, that's a thing. I'm not sure if I just opened a new kind of worms on this. Because I mean, like, look, it was a lot of fun. I thought I was going to be way more in pain or like, you know, really struggling. I was pretty surprised by the end that I felt like, wow, that's it's done, and I didn't hate it. Like, of course, like there was one day I was like, this is rubbish. Like, why am I doing this? But Scott was there, so he was great.
Oh,
I know he was such a, like, you know, a savior. But that's a good question, Ron, because I've been sort of wondering, like, well, is there any other thing that we can do for like other rivers or other waterways? And there's someone else doing it at the moment. So her name is Mina Guli. So she's been running, you know, for like water access and water security around like the world.
Yeah.
And she does this sort of big river runs or like a marathon for each river. So I think she's down her 100th marathon. So she's doing like 200 marathons in a year now. But yeah, it might happen that at some point, well, we're based in the Yarra, so not sure if I might start running the creeks now, like just joining, you know, each creek and do something like that. Or eventually some people were saying, oh, what about the Maribyrnong River? Everything happens in the Yarra, but everyone forgets about the West. It's like, well, yeah, that could be an idea. I can't do two rivers at once, but we can just start somewhere. But yeah, like I wouldn't close the door on that one. The things like I don't really know if that's going to happen next year though.
Yeah. And am I correct in believing that you're raising funds through this run as well?
Yeah, so we got a fundraiser going for the next 2 weeks. I don't know when people are going to listen to this, but that's fine. The thing is, if the fundraiser is not active by then, they can still donate.
It'll be in time. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, so we got that campaign going for the next 2 weeks, and we hope, you know, that the money we can raise is going to keep helping us as an organization to keep delivering the work of advocacy around river protection and river health. And yeah, like the organization has been around for the last 17 years. We have done really good work around, like, you know, planning controls with government. We just put 26,000 plants on the ground after 2 years of regeneration projects.
Yeah.
We just won a couple of awards on the microplastic work that we have done. So yeah, it's like all that money helps, you know, keeping running the organization steady and strong. And yeah, and also just, we hope that people can get to know us, you know, and if they can't donate, they can share it with their friends and family or just come around and join an event.
I'll get you to send me the links for that, and I'll pop them in the show notes. Or if you're listening now, make sure you check the show notes and maybe donate or find, you know, share the podcast with some friends who might be able to. So what was your main thing that you learned from doing this run?
Well, in a personal level, I learned I'm way more resilient than what I thought. I thought it was going to be way harder than, you know, what it actually was. I had a lot of fun. Like, I was like, wow, that was tough. You know, it was not easy. Like, don't think it was a park run. It was not a park run. There was definitely a lot of pain, kind of on and off. But yeah, that really kind of, like, you almost like feel invincible after doing this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I can do anything. Like I'm a superhero, but in a good way, you know. And yeah, it's like such a really kind of self-esteem booster as well. That at the end, like yeah, like you, as the same as you, Isabel. Like you have done some really cool things and really like amazing runs. So I don't know if you're going to have the same sort of feeling, but yeah, you feel really kind of strong with yourself, and kind of also I kind of started reconnecting to myself after like, you know, 2 years of this sort of COVID funk. That a lot of people lost motivation. Even like for me last year was a bit, you know, over this and running on the treadmill and running around the house and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really good way to reconnect to what I really liked from the sport, and reconnecting to who I am as a runner, and, you know, caring about the environment. This is me, this is my thing. Sort of refining my feet literally into what I like to do. So that's from a personal level. Now, from a professional level, it was an amazing thing to see the whole transition, you know, from the source, you know, really pristine place, that you just listen to the birds, and like you got this sort of flame robins going around and popping around, and the kookaburras and the cockatoos and all those like amazing birds, and like going into the city and like the cement concrete jungle.
Seagulls.
Yeah, and the seagulls, and then the pigeons and the miners and all those things. But yeah, kind of like literally seeing the transition from the wild into the urban area, and like understanding the change of maybe relationship between people in the river. Like the change of perception, because like you go into the upper Yarra and people swim in it, you know, they have this way more positive relationship and vibe with the river, that kind of they celebrate the river way more than when you go into the city and the river becomes more like a background. Like, you know, you're in a bar in the river, but you just use it as a prop. But you don't really recognize that you might really enjoy a connection with the river in a different way.
Well, that's very interesting.
That is. I like that. That resonates. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with us. Like I said, if people want to donate, the link will be in the show notes. But I hope you're obviously in recovery mode now, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So, but like, look, I was again like jumping into the resilient thing. I was surprised that by the second day or third day, I feel like I feel like I could run. My coach had to stop me though, and say, like, Karin, do not run. Like you're allowed to go for walks, but just contain yourself. So been going around for walks and eating a lot of chocolate and ice cream, which is great. But yeah, it's just that's the thing, like learning how you need to stop yourself after, you know, a big training block of 5-6 months, and recognize, you know, I need to give myself a week off. And that's
right. And, you know, a week off, you're not going to lose that much fitness. Although I still think, because it was your birthday yesterday, that you should have run 35Ks for your birthday.
I'm so sorry. But like, look, I did walk around like 8Ks. So I think that's fine. And I tried to eat a lot of cake, but couldn't fit it.
You didn't eat the 35 cakes?
No.
I'm disappointed.
I'm so sorry, Isabel. But next year I can run the 36.
Yes. Just gets harder the older you get, unfortunately.
Oh, that's fine. That's okay. It's not 280. That's fine.
No, that's right. Although, gosh, that would be an achievement, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no.
Into that age. All righty. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and congratulations on your run and for bringing such an important issue to the awareness of Victorians who, like you say, we take it for granted, and we really shouldn't, because it's a special river at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we have so many running trails, you know, around the river. So why not like this, you know, use this chance to connect to it, explore it, and maybe give back to it. Either you don't have to donate, but if you find a piece of rubbish, just take it with you.
And maybe be careful with your own rubbish.
Correct. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Bye. See you later.